welcome to our virtual Disrupt HR event for Columbus. As many of you know, tomorrow, April 30th, actually marks our celebration of, we had 4:30 on our calendars to do the in-person event last year, and that did not happen, obviously. So we decided we'd try to do, a little celebration for our 1 year. And just do it virtually. So I am here to introduce our speakers, to introduce our sponsors. My name is Jamie Myers. If you don't know me, I am a staffing manager at Willery and chairwoman of DisruptHR Columbus. I'm actually joined today by Bridget Klein. She is my fellow coworker, as well as John Bernanovich, the owner of Willery, and our amazing speakers, Claire Petrie, Michelle Leedy, Cleric Coder, and Dr. Melissa Briggs Phillips. So welcome everybody, we're excited. Just a little bit of an update on where we stand with an in-person event with DisruptHR. So we will continue to do virtual events from here on out until we actually end up placing a date for the in-person event. We do not have any word from corporate yet on renewing our license, so we're really waiting on them in order to propose a new date. With that said, we're thinking about looking into an outdoor venue. It's really important that we keep your safety in mind. So we're targeting May, hoping May of 2022, and hopefully having an awesome outdoor event. So we will absolutely keep you posted on that. Wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors for today. Thank you so much for sponsoring DisruptHR Columbus, whether it's virtual or in person. We really appreciate your support. And without this, without your support, it wouldn't be possible for us to be here today. So shout out to gold sponsor UKG, our silver sponsor ADP. We have bronze sponsors USI, Delta Dental, Bradco, HR Acuity, How's My HR, Puzzle HR, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. Our additional sponsors are Workday, Nimble Learning Strategies, ClearPath Benefit Advisors, HX, Artina Promotional Products, HX, and Hiraco. Event sponsor is Willery. So now I will pass the virtual microphone over to Bridget, who will review the format and introduce each speaker. Have fun.
All right, thank you so much, Jamie. And I know I have a slide on this later on, but if anyone is interested in joining the DisruptHR committee, there is information at willery.com/disrupthrcbus, so CBUS. Not super active right now, but as we get into planning an in-person event, we'll definitely need all hands on deck. I know we had a great committee in the past, but if anyone else is interested in joining, please join us. So for the format today, we keep disrupting it a little bit. We want to do something that's a little different. So with a year that's unlike any others, we want to hear the lessons learned, the emotions discussed, and the habits changed from this amazing panel of speakers. So they will discuss their #1 disruption, what they went for, or what they went through, and their takeaways. And don't forget to use the chat feature to connect with fellow disruptors. I see Chris Redders on there. And Jonathan, I will get to I'll try and send you a passcode in just a moment. And then you can also use the Q&A to ask questions, and we'll ask those all at the end of the presentations. So I went over that. All right, our first speaker today comes from Buffalo. This is Claire Petrie. She is currently the Director of Technology Talent Management at Lighthouse Technology Services and President of Claire Petrie HR and Training LLC. She's been in HR and recruiting for over 8 years. She has used LinkedIn and Twitter to build her personal brand and uncover new opportunities for herself and the companies she's worked for. She's passionate about helping others do the same. She is a PHR and a SHRM CP certified, on the board of Buffalo Niagara Human Resources Association, I think I got that right, and her local SHRM chapter, and a camp counselor and board member for Empower Camp. All right, Claire.
Awesome. Thanks, Bridget. I didn't know I was kicking it off first, so this is fun. Yeah, so I would say that being on furlough throughout 2020 was definitely a new experience for me. I'm sure some of you here on the line might have been your first time going through a layoff or furlough as well. So it was, my furlough was certain times throughout the month, starting in April, like through towards the end of the year. So it was changing every month. It was like a rotating schedule with team members. So for me personally, just the uncertainty was probably the hardest part for me. If you've seen my Instagram, I love to have things planned out, and that's what feels really comfortable for me. So, um, and being home a lot more was, of course, just a change too. So not necessarily a bad thing, but just a change. My typical work day was, going to the office 8 to 5 and then going to events or networking or whatever until like 7, 8 o'clock at night. So I really thrive meeting connections and friends in person. So I can't wait to be back in Columbus with all of you. But yeah, so for the first few months, obviously, of COVID, things were on hold before events really transitioned to online events. So that was just really hard for the extrovert in me. So moving on to the emotions that went along with that, I went back in my phone and found these pictures. You may notice a theme in the first two. I all of a sudden had a house sweater. It was very hard for me to change out of pajamas every day. And yes, it's actually still kind of hard to do that today, but I started losing some hair, which I talked to a couple of my friends here locally. They kind of went through something similar. I'm just now starting to get some peach fudge back, but I think just between the schedule, eating habits, stress level, etc., just some new, changes, obviously, going on that were really uncomfortable. So I think my dog Lucy kind of summed it up here best. Just felt kind of down and out at first when I was going to be home for a while and dealing with the new changes. So even though obviously I was still very blessed to have, a roof over my head, and there's so much to be grateful for, my mind was definitely just in a mental state with that uncertainty and not knowing how long everything was going to go on for. So moving on to kind of what happened after that, I really just had some more time at home, not going to all those events and things that were kind of canceled right off the bat, to think more about my business and what I can offer my community. So my dad actually had an LLC for a while, and he was in retirement mode, and we decided to get it transferred over to me. So I'd already been doing LinkedIn trainings and some other career growth related, speaking engagements for a while, but people started asking me, what's your rate? So I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this official. I'm going to get the LLC. I also found Zumba, which you can see here on the slide as well. My favorite amazing instructor, her name's Nettie Brewer. She does Zoom classes every Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So let me know if you would like Nettie's info to join me. And then also painted, of course, some candlesticks, bookcases. You can see pictures again here of my planners from my Instagram. So really being more intentional about gratitude and writing a few wins each week, even if it was just I cooked a new recipe or something like that. So just trying to utilize that positive thinking. And then I also got to travel to Cape Cod, Massachusetts twice. That's where my dad and his wife live, semi-retired. And I typically only go once a summer. So being able to go twice, although it was due to my furlough schedule, so I was kind of upset, I was also really grateful that I had that extra vacation time almost to spend with them, because I usually wouldn't see them as often. So where things are at now, I have my fun official logo, which I made in April of last year for Cleric Petrie HR and training and Cleric Petrie coaching. So throughout 2020, actually starting kind of in April timeframe, I worked with people one-on-one on their job searches and advancing their careers. And just this year, I launched a new one-on-one 3-month coaching program I'm really excited about. So obviously got used to working online and remotely and seeing all of your faces like this over a computer instead of in person. And got to record some fun videos with friends, like my friend here, Chuck Privatera, do some online Zoom events. I'm very connected with my alma mater, University at Buffalo. I saw a few of their names here, I think, are attending. So it was great to still be able to show up to those club meetings and have things transition again to online. So I've been able to keep up with that a lot this year. And just a reminder to all my friends out there in attendance today, you can't spell superhero without HR, if you can see my laptop decal. So you're all doing an amazing job for your employees and your organizations. I know it's been a really hard year, and I hope you're hanging in there. And of course, reach out to me if you need somebody to talk to. And then, so basically what I learned, kind of continuing on with where I'm at with everything, is really to utilize what I now call my silver lining thinking. So I never really used that phrase a lot in the past, but I do believe everything happens for a reason. So just trying to think back on the past year and what good things came out of it, like being able to visit my parents a little more often. I learned I can still make an impact and network and build relationships remotely, which I wasn't, again, as spending, I guess, as much time doing as I was going to in-person events, but so I learned I can have this awesome community like with all of you in Ohio, and just staying positive through hard situations. So the uncertainty in me is still freaking out now with like still what is the rest of this year going to look like, but I guess we've all kind of found our way to adapt throughout the last year. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Claire. I think I had those same candlesticks. I was trying to remember what was I going to do with these, and I took them to Goodwill and I was going to give them to you the next time I was in Buffalo, but now they're at the local Goodwill. So maybe if I find more of them in my house, I'll have to send them to you. Thank you so much. I know there's a lot going on with everything, and I think that silver lining thinking can be so helpful. All right, next up we have Michelle Leedy, and where's my, okay, your screen. I feel like I need 3 screens to run these virtual events, and I only have 2, so next time 3. Michelle Leedy, there it is. Okay, serves as Trinity Health as Director of Organization Design and Development. She is passionate about creating positive, sustainable impact and organization effectiveness through intentional leadership, strategy, and execution. Her background comprises over 15 years in consulting and leadership roles across organization design, organization development, and human capital strategy, and is also inclusive of enterprise and organization change management, talent development, and performance improvement. Michelle's expertise spans industries and functions, including healthcare, utilities, information technology, human resources, higher education, retail, government, banking, and nonprofits. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here with the HR community today. So my disruption, here's the situation. I had been working a year, well over a year actually, on a large scale organization design project. It was functional in nature. It was coast to coast. We had put the recommendation out to our sponsors, and we were really on a pause with being able to move forward. The disruption was we got the green light. And so that was, that was a big update, right? So we got the green light to structurally realign, again, coast to coast, and move forward with every aspect of implementation. There were a few nuances to how we needed to move into the work. We needed to move rapidly, we needed to work it remotely, and we needed to be agile, really agile. So rapidly, we needed to move fast. We were in the middle of, not just actually the middle of the COVID global pandemic, we were at its peak when this occurred. And this was in a healthcare organization. So as you can imagine, going through a large scale structural realignment during this time added its own special flavor to what was already a pretty busy pot. We needed to do it remotely. And again, the reason for this was we were in the middle of the pandemic, and for roles much like mine, if we were not needing to be on site in a healthcare environment, we worked remotely. So everything from staffing realignment, hiring, onboarding for this process was done remotely for the most part, perhaps a few exceptions, but talking just like we are today. And we needed to be agile. Again, in this period, not only did we need to pivot on a day-to-day basis, sometimes we were pivoting in the moment. There was new information that we were learning every day about how COVID was impacting us as a healthcare system, and how we needed to come together to do what was most important, which was serve our community and our patients, right? yet we still had this alignment going on. So that pivot and agility was dialed up in a way that was a whole new level for a lot of us. So in addition to supporting that realignment, I also had the opportunity and privilege to lead the stand-up of an organization design and development new practice area. And for most respective purposes, this was like standing up a new business, ground up. Granted, it was part of a much larger organization, but as it existed in this newly designed format, it was new. So it required entrepreneurial spirit. It required a lot of grit and tenacity and endurance. And probably most importantly, during this time, really heightened compassion. So when I think about the emotions that I went through, I thought about this for a little bit, and I landed on this visual because it was like there was a whole season of emotions. I didn't really land on one or a few, and they were all a little different. I would say one thing that was different from my emotions is they weren't chronological like seasons. If this picture could kind of overlap more and layer, and maybe there'd be different piles of leaves in different spots, that would probably be more like my experience, especially when we were moving with such volume and velocity during this period. So when I thought about it, I think about spring, right? There's growth, things are popping up through the ground. And the reality was, after putting so much sweat equity and love into this design for over a year, my emotions, I had joy. I had like sincere surprise. I was excited. I mean, there was a lot of work that went into this. So to get the green light, especially during this time, was really exciting. And honestly, it was joyful. When I think about summer, things are taking root, right? It's green, things are pretty much embedded. As we were moving well into implementation and I was seeing the realization of the design, there were feelings and emotions of satisfaction. I also had emotions of craving because I wanted more. I wanted to, not only stand up, I wanted to start to see the results as good stewards of the organization and see this design do what it was strategically intended to do. And so that craving was there for more to make it really come to life. With my fall season, right? For me, I was thinking about letting go. And I think about, when the leaves are changing, they're really pretty, they start to fall. There was some real feelings of nostalgia that were going on. We, as part of this design, also streamlined the service portfolio coast to coast. And I'll tell you, for one, there were programs that were very near and dear to my team. We put a lot of love in them, maybe on a regional level. We had to let go to do what the design was there to do. So although I was leading part of this, I also had this nostalgia around things that had been very endearing and that we had fond memories around. There were also feelings of empathy as people around me were going through so much. I mean, when you think about the emotional backpack, not only was there this change, and regardless of how you feel about it, it's still, right, it is a disruption. People were dealing with all kinds of stuff, schooling kids at home and, things that were going on politically in our community, socially, COVID. I mean, you could just layer it on and just whatever else is normally going on in life. And then the winter emotion, I think about hibernating. And so at this point, the hibernation was, I was tired. I had been moving fast. I had approached it like a marathon. I was on, I was going, I was driven. And so that kind of, when you think about everything being interconnected, I think I had this combination of emotional and physical and mental fatigue at times, just because I was running so hard. So steps to overcome, two big things. One, I continued to ground in my compass, what my why was. Big believer in the design, still cheerleader for it on every level and an advocate. I needed to, when I had those days where there was massive pivoting going on, or I was just tired because I'd been up so late and gotten up so early in the morning, I grounded in my why and I poured my heart into the work. I wanted to serve others. That's what I'm wired for. I wanted to have a positive impact. And I really felt like sometimes I'm pouring my heart in, it was visible. Sometimes how I was serving people was very much behind the scenes and in ways people would never know, nor should they. But that was, how I could overcome those things when the emotions got maybe a little cranky or a little harder, I was fatigued, I went back to my why. And I just really aimed to show up as my best self for other people and push through. So what did I learn? One, fuel your passion. So I know I love what I do. I'm driven for it, but you know what? Every strength has a shadow. And sometimes when you're doing a marathon, you got to shift to a sprint. And I learned that I could only keep doing marathon by marathon in a week so long. I needed to shift to a sprint, sprint, recover, and give myself a little more love so that I could go the distance. Related to change, I learned I love it. I still love it. I'm really quirky that way, and it reinforced it. And I learned that I need to honor the power of change from myself as well. Being a leader of change, going through change myself, I needed to honor that I also go through that curve, and that's okay. The breathe part, I'll tell you, this was part of it as well. You may know Fritz Perls. I'm a Gestalt professional certified coach. Fritz Perls is a Gestalt theorist and psychologist, has a phrase, lose your mind and come to your senses. It sounds funny, right? What he's talking about is get out of your head and into your body a little bit. My mind would be running. Sometimes I couldn't get to sleep. I'd wake up dreaming, having gotten work done. I needed to get out of my head and into my body. So I'd get outside, I ground my feet on the ground. And all this comes together. What I learned, it's just so important. Do what you love. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I could not get myself off mute, which for those of you who interact with me daily, it's probably not the worst thing ever because I love to talk. Thank you so much, Michelle. And as you guys can tell, she is incredibly passionate. And I know between John, Michelle, and I, or maybe I'm just editing them, but I feel like I'm part of the conversation. There are some great conversations out there through DisruptHR and HR Like a Boss on passion in the workplace. You can tell she's passionate, and I highly recommend them. I know it's just evident, and there's some great tips on how to implement that throughout your workday. All right. Speaking of passion, we have Cleric Coder. And I will say I went on a TikTok rabbit hole this morning of the Go Ant Flow TikTok. And I will say also Cleric Coder has a remarkable LinkedIn presence of balancing the personal, the experiences, the entrepreneurial journey. And that's really just fun to watch. You know what? Also, Claire Petrie obviously has you guys are just amazing. So going back on topic, Cleric Coder is on a mission to ensure everyone has access to menstrual products. Antflow stocks hundreds of companies across the world with their 100% organic cotton tampons and pads. Claire launched her first company at age 16, designed a bag for Vera Bradley that sold out in 24 hours and has her own line of gifts. The 22-year-old, you'll let us know if that needs updating. Founder is recognized as a Teal Fellow and a Forbes 30 under 30.
Woohoo, thank you. Yes, I am 24. Love the comments about Zumba that's going on in the chat. Keep them coming. I was a certified Zumba instructor. That was one of my first jobs. Yahoo. Anyways, so glad to be here. I'm a founder, right? And so being a small team, HR accidentally falls on me. And so I'm glad to be a part of this conversation because I'm learning. And then also, hoping to grow. But I'll share a little bit of our story here at Antflow. So yes, I founded Antflow. We're most known for designing a free vend tampon and pad dispenser so that businesses and schools can sustainably offer free tampons and pads in their bathrooms. And I'm in the business of menstruation. And you're like, man, periods don't stop for a pandemic. You should be fine. The problem is, we rely on people menstruating outside of the home. And so we have closed all accounts ranging from Twitter to Google to Princeton to middle schools, high schools. 13 states have now passed legislation requiring middle schools and high schools to offer free tampons and pads in the bathrooms. And we stocked them, but nobody was going to those bathrooms. And so in February of 2020, right, I have a small growing enterprise based right here in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm looking around at my team and I'm thinking, oh my God, I have one goal as a founder and CEO, and it is to keep everybody paid through this entire thing. And I didn't know how long it was. And we were talked about, Michelle, you did a great job talking about adjusting to change and adjusting to the situation, engaging in that entrepreneurial spirit. And so instead of looking at the things that we didn't have, I hyper focused on the things that we did have. And you can see this photo here. We actually retooled all of our pad production to make FDA approved 3-ply masks. And if you want to go to the next slide, these were the emotions that were going on throughout the entire process of taking our core business of tampons and pads, listening to customers, hearing that masks and medical masks are needed, thinking, oh my God, we are a Class 2 medical device manufacturer. We manufacture menstrual pads. We know how to do this. Retooling all of our pad production, wiring all of our money in our bank account to be able to retool this production, spending 2 weeks hoping and crossing our fingers that we can close enough deals on these masks to make payroll. That's all those emotions, right? Like that's what was going on through 2020. Starting out January, like the yay, we're gonna do this. And then just like progressively getting a little bit more frantic. And if you want to go to the next slide, I'm really, really thankful to say the steps that we took to overcome is the business pivot worked very, very well. What we did was we thought about OntFlow and looked at what we do. We support businesses and schools with ensuring people have access to basic necessities. For us, previously, that meant tampons and pads. And now, in the age of pandemic, that meant wipes, that meant masks, that meant sanitizers. And throughout 2020, we launched 7 new product lines. You can see at the bottom right there. That is our goworkflow.com website. So if places are reopening, we still are manufacturing quality and medical grade masks, wipes, sanitizers, etc. And that's what we did. And I'm really, really grateful. It allowed us to continue to grow throughout a wild year and even higher as well. And now I'm even more excited to say that places are reopening. And one of the first phone calls that they're making is to OntFlow. And why are they doing that? Because they're excited and invigorated to bring people back to their workplace, back to event centers, back to their library systems, and to celebrate OntFlow in their bathrooms. And so that was our wild change pivot of 2020. And we are here on the other side celebrating both workflow and OntFlow. And together we're working to change the world one cycle at a time. We call that people helping people, period.
I love that, how you took your purpose, which was basic necessity, and just broadened it to make it really important for where we are now in our lives. And like you said, it's so important, people are coming to you because you supported them through the pandemic in the way that they needed. And that's why they're, maybe they know about you, maybe they're coming to you for that. All right, thank you so much, Claire. And we have up next our final panelist today, Dr. Melissa. She is an opinionated psychologist, and that is her bio. I am not calling her an opinionated psychologist, even though I think she is, but in the best way possible. And she's well past Gladwell's 10,000 hours and knows the full real stories that people carry and believe almost everyone can behave forward to their next or to their best next. As a behavioral scientist, she values data and cutting-edge research on mental health and wellness. As a clinical and consulting psychologist, she believes in the power of therapy to resolve depression and anxiety, repair partnerships, and successfully navigate stressful life situations.
Hi. Okay. So I think as the final leg of the relay here, I'm feeling the pressure to carry us to the finish line after those 3 amazing women sharing their stories. So I always have kind of a unique lens when I'm with Willery because I'm a therapist, and I've done trauma work for 20 some years. So my lens is slightly different, and I kind of teased before that I'm kind of the Eeyore of the bunch, and I'm totally cool with that. So boundaries. That is something that became a major issue as of the middle of March 2020. So human beings like lines. We like lines. We like to draw them on maps, and then we decide we're on this side of the line, you're on that side of the line. We draw lines between our property so that this is my yard, this is your yard. It starts to get a little more challenging when it's vaguer constructs like emotional boundaries, psychological boundaries, identity boundaries. One of my life precepts is better living by boundaries. And what COVID did was obliterate people's boundaries in all kinds of ways. Now, for me as a therapist, one of the things that it obliterated was that I no longer had separation from what my people were going through. Everything they were talking about all day were exactly the things that I was going through too. And usually we have some distance. In fact, sometimes we will say, well, I can't serve that patient population because it's a little too close to home because of countertransference or projection. Like we guard that pretty carefully. COVID took that all away. We also lost boundaries between the beginning of our day and the end of our day. And everyone talked about that. You know, I'm just sort of, you know, Claire talked about her house sweater. And I had some folks that would, you know, have something that symbolized, okay, I'm going to work, even though it's literally 8 feet from my bed to the place where I'm doing work. School came home. So families were all of a sudden, there were no boundaries. So that in and of itself was the biggest COVID impact for me, and learning how to navigate boundaries in a boundaryless world. That was probably something that I talked about frequently. If we want to do a Q&A after, I'm happy to talk about that. There are wonderful resources out there, and I think that the power of boundaries is huge in a human life. So I need to go. Okay, so we know boundaries became a thing, and they were sort of derailing because they were fuzzy and blurry. Another place that people struggled with boundaries is around their emotions. So what am I feeling? When am I feeling? Am I feeling something proportional or accurate to the offense? So take this little feeling wheel. I use it all the time with clients, all the time. And it is, emotions are the white noise that burn in the background, whether we want to acknowledge they're there or not. And COVID definitely just sort of cracked the membrane between the daily execution of our life and our emotional life. So learning to accurately label what you were feeling became key for my people. Now, listen, I will tell you, I do this stuff, and every now and then it would sneak up on me. So sometime in like February, maybe it was January of this past year, it was a Friday afternoon, and I was watching my temperament as the day went on. I had like 8 clients that day. And they were a blend of like trauma clients, executive clients. And as the day, I had a couple couples, and as the day went on, I was like, something is wrong. I am not good. I am not good. I had to cancel my afternoon. I was off. I was impatient with people. I felt like I was on the verge of bursting into tears. So I got this feeling wheel out, and I sat there, and I was like, what is going on for me? And I was like, oh, I'm sad. I'm sad. I do this work, and I was this disconnected from being sad. Now, the reason I was sad, and I didn't even connect it until 2:30 that day, was at 8 o'clock in the morning. My mom had called me and asked me to help her with the logistics of a faceplate on my father's tombstone. And she asked for support with scanning and signing the document. Did I like the design? It was beautiful, but it was functional. It was like this transactional thing that happened. And then it ended, and I went about my day. And it took me 6 freaking hours to get to the point where I was like, oh, that's what's happening for me. So I canceled my day. I called my spouse. We had all these plans and things we were committed to. I was like, you're canceling it all. You're telling the kids to go away, and I get the couch and a sad movie so that I can cry it out in a nice bottle of Bordeaux. It wouldn't suck. And he happily obliged and took care of me that night. So what are some of the things that I took, some of the things I did through COVID to overcome? So one of the first things that clients jokingly talked about was trough eating. I don't know if you guys can relate to this. I had a client that came in that was like, I realized I make food and I eat over the thing on the stove. Like, I don't even put it on a plate. Like, I might feed other people. I'm just trough eating because I really don't want to know how much I'm eating. I think that's part of it. And it's just, there's something sort of mindless and weirdly therapeutic about just eating out the pasta bolognese out of the bowl. So that was one of the things a few of my very clever, sarcastic clients coined with me through COVID was trough eating. So one of the takeaways for me was walking. We like, I think everybody else that had the resources and the stamina to, got a pandemic puppy. And I walked that puppy probably hundreds of miles. I'm not kidding. And I would leave without my phone, which everyone in my family hated. And I would take a new path and just get lost. And it occurred to me that no one gets lost anymore. We all have a little blue dot that tells us where to go. No one gets lost. So you never have to stop and ask for directions. You never have the experience of being a stranger someplace, having to ask for someone to be kind. So we're losing this beautiful experience of having to ask and be a stranger and rely on kindness. So maybe that's part of why some of our kindness to others is atrophying. I don't know what the right word is. So those long walks became times for me to make meaning out of the experience we were having. And that's key for suffering, to make meaning out of the experience that you're having. And it doesn't mean put pink frosting on it or pretend it's not there. It means doing the labor to make meaning out of your suffering. So what are some key takeaways after the last 16 months? This picture is from my planner / gratitude journal. And I took this picture and I used it in a slide deck on February 26th, 2020 at the Mid-Ohio Restaurant Expo, where thousands of people were coming and going. And I did a talk on the innovation stage about mental mind management with grit. And I was talking about the power of practicing gratitude. And this is real. This is a picture from mine that I included in that talk. And it strikes me when I look at it because, one, the talk I was giving, I didn't have one conversation about COVID. And 3 weeks later, 60% of those businesses are gone. So it's this reminder about the delicacy of our human journey, and that it's kind of okay that we all live in a little bit of active denial that bad things can happen. It's the only way to function every day. And that little snapshot of that picture is just a reminder for me. So some lessons for me and the folks that I work with. I have a lot of clients in the restaurant industry, in healthcare, and in public government positions. So you can imagine that my availability, it was intense. It was a very intense thing, because if you're my person, I'm your person. And if you need me, maybe it's once a quarter, but when everybody needed me all at once, that was intense. And so I had to practice ruthless optimism with my folks versus toxic positivity, because people weren't having it. So you could not gloss over the grief, the shattering loss, the fear. You had to teach people how to practice ruthless optimism. And we can talk about that if you want. Two, your previous speakers kind of talked about it. There's learning how to do non-dualistic thinking might save your life. And I think COVID forced people into that good and bad things that don't belong together can go at the same time. I think COVID sort of forced us to deal with that. I mean, I think Michelle said, hey, there were moments it was joyful and wonderful. And I had a lot of people in my office saying, I'm kind of afraid to say this out loud, but like, I'm good. My introverts were like, this is kind of awesome. I had CEOs of companies say, I had no idea I was introverted, like being able to have some space, that play acting at extroversion. I'm getting emotional capital back. I didn't even know that I needed. So that non-dualistic thinking can help. Make space to complete your emotions. You have to make space. Emotions are like energy circuits. And what happened during COVID is they just got interrupted, and especially people that were working and had small children at home, you couldn't ever complete, let alone a task. You couldn't complete an emotion. And when you've got 8 emotional sparks going and you can't complete it, you frizz out, you just go numb. And I suppose one of the last things that I want to say is that over this last 16 months, something that's become very real for me is all of the best therapy in the world isn't going to do anything if the world we live in sucks. And that sounds depressing, but it's not. You have to look up and out. It's okay to look down and in. That is okay. That's necessary, but that can't be the only way you live your life. You got to look up and you got to look out, and maybe take action to change macro level as well as micro level. So those were my COVID lessons. Thanks for letting me share them with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I feel like I have just so many thoughts and emotions after all that. I know we've all gone through it, and that Mid-Ohio Restaurant Association event convention, I remember actually going to with my parents when I was like in middle school or late elementary, and it was so much fun. So I'm applying that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not gonna, that kind of experience isn't gonna probably happen anytime soon, much like, you know, any in-person event. So it's kind of crazy to feel that. As people who have seen the chat will say, we are actually just about wrapping up. So anyone who wants to stay, I'm going to open up and promote everyone to panelists so that if you have any questions, you can ask them directly. You are also welcome to ask them in the chat or in the Q&A for any of our speakers. So one last thank you to our sponsors. This event and any future events we have does not happen without them. So once again, gold sponsor UKG, silver sponsor ADP, bronze sponsors USI, Delta Dental, Pradco, HR Acuity, Halsma HR, Puzzle HR, Anthem Blue Cross, and Blue Shield. Our additional sponsors, Workday, Nimble Learning Strategies, ClearPath Benefit Advisors, Paychex, Artina Promotional Products, and Haraco, and our event sponsor, Willery. I know we didn't really go through them. All of the information is on the DisruptHR LinkedIn about all of these companies, and I'll be sharing it again in the coming weeks. So if you have a need for any of them, please reach out and mention that you heard about it, because of DisruptHR helps sponsors. I know as the director of marketing, it helps us know where people find us.